Yes.
Initially, she could not even sit up.
She could.
But the last time we saw her, she could
stand, but she couldn't walk.
She couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And we're praying that the situation is better. So for those of us who may not have followed the story, who may not have heard the story, this is the report Maxwell Agbagba brought us when he initially discovered this. We will be speaking with a lawyer on the back of the sentencing to evaluate exactly what the court has done and just get his legal opinion on all that has gone on. His name is Dennis Ejeijumo. He's a director at the Center for Juvenile Delinquency. He's joined us on the line. Good morning, lawyer. Good morning, lawyer.
Good morning, Daniel, and to all your listeners.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Would ask that you just stay on the line for a few more minutes and we will hear this report that Maxwell Agbagba puts together, and then afterwards we would come to you, lawyer Dennis Ejeijumo. Now take a listen.
I am at the Kaswa residence of the Class 2 pupil. Family members are seated discussing their next line of action. Very close to them is the victim seated in a plastic chair covered with a cloth. There is a pillow supporting her back with her two legs resting on a kitchen stool. As she stretches in the chair, tears begin to flow. She is in pain. The 9-year-old girl says on the day she reported late to vacation classes, her class teacher offered to teach her what she had missed, but ended up inserting his fingers in her genitals.
There were some children playing in the classroom where he took me. He sacked all of them. I told one of my friends there to wait, but the teacher disagreed. When I started writing, he came closer and rubbed his hands in my head and said my father has asked him to provide all my needs. He put me on one of the tables and started inserting his fingers in my genitals. It was painful. I started struggling with him. In an attempt to flee, my pelvis hit one of the tables. I fell down and later ran home with my younger sister. I was scared to tell my mom.
The victim's grandfather says the suspect confessed to the crime and later gave them 50 Ghana cedis to cater for the girl, but denied the allegation when they reported the matter to the police.
He told me that, I know the accused very well, and then the wife. He told me that he begs me, I should forgive him. I should forgive him. He doesn't know what exactly happened to him before he did that to the kid. So what?
So that was the grandfather of the 9-year-old girl. You heard her account herself. It got to a point she could hardly even sit up as a result of this atrocity that was done to her. So let's go ahead now. And the story as we know it so far, the girl has received hospital treatment. She went to the Winneba Hospital after visiting the Kaswa Polyclinic. And she went to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. She has been in and out of the hospital for the past week. The case has also been pursued in court. And finally, the perpetrator was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Listen to the reaction of the grandfather of the girl, who is one of her guardians, after this sentence was passed. This is the father of the girl, rather.
I have spent a lot of money concerning this kid, hospital, medicine, whatever. I spent almost, that is 5,500 at the moment. But then, I don't care of that, because there's somebody who can pay for me. But then, I just want the help of my granddaughter. They started persuading me that, okay, they really have to come, I should start the case to the house for settlement. But then if I happen to do that, they will not mind it. Presently, as I'm talking to you, the kid is still lying at the Kolebu Hospital for almost 2 weeks. It's a very wonderful, very dismay, and very, it's a tremendous thing to me. I don't care the money that I've spent on the kid to survive here, but then my point is that, okay, when he go to the jail and see the difficulties over there, when he come back, He has to preach to the others not to do that. I don't care of the money that I spent, but then since I've been jailed, I'm okay. And I praise the judge, and I praise the what we call the prosecutor, and I praise the CID who took all these cases all over. I praise all of them.
And that was the grandfather of the victim, rather. The grandfather of the victim. And he was reacting. You can understand anymore that the anger that he's been feeling as a result of all that has gone on.
No, I mean, of course. And even when we went there, his anger was palpable, and it is to be expected. Because even us who are not directly related to, felt a certain amount of anger at how unfair it is, and he kept on saying, I remember that she's just a child. There's absolutely nothing on her physically that warrants this kind of attention, and so it's heartbreaking when somebody so young and vulnerable, placed in the care of somebody who's in a position of trust is abused this way.
It's really, really unacceptable from that teacher, and the law has taken its course. But let's look at the exact course the law took and put that under scrutiny. Dennis Ejejomo, director at the Center for Juvenile Delinquency and lawyer himself, has joined us on the line. Good morning, and thanks again for joining us, Dennis.
Good morning, Daniel. Good morning, Daniel.
In the first place, the culprit was charged for indecent assault, rather than what the layman would have called defilement or sexual abuse. Can you educate us as to why this route would be taken?
Well, the fact that, first of all, I think is a very disastrous story. It should not happen to anybody. But the facts that were presented, because there was no penetration, i.e. sexual penetration, that is how come he was charged for indecent assault. So the problem is not coming from the judge. The problem is the law. The law does not make any distinction of indecent assault on children. Does it make us against adults? It just turns everybody into one category of indecent assault. Okay? And that is the problem that we are having. And indecent assault under the law is a misdemeanor. And for misdemeanors, the highest punishment is 3 years. And people should bear in mind that the court is not the maker of the law. The court is a servant of statute. The judge had a mandate to apply the law. The harshest punishment that the judge can evoke, irrespective of how he feels about it, is that of 3 years. If there had been sexual penetration, then probably he would have been charged for defilement. So it's misleading legally for everybody to be talking about defilement, because the fact as presented was not defilement, and I could not have foreseen how the judge would have convicted this based on these facts on defilement. It's just that there is a problem with the law, and I think this has been something that we have all advocated, that there is a need for a special dispensation when it comes to children. And you realize that the father was also talking about the cost that he has made. We have been making calls that there should be a victim support fund for children. You understand? Because if you look at most of the people who actually, if you do not have money, the way the system has been structured, you cannot get justice. The cost of transportation alone can deny you justice.
And this is something that, and this is a roadblock that we got to dealing with this specific case, because it got to a point, it was a listener who had to even donate money for this girl to be taken to the hospital. Now, the question I want to ask is that there are some parts of our laws that even allow for the states to take up the medical bills of any such victims. Is it that we are not demanding it enough, or the state itself is not equipped enough to take up this responsibility?
There one thing that you and I have realized is that if the state wants to do something, they always find money to do it. The issue that has happened is that the state has not seen such issues as a priority. And for that matter, the state has not designated enough funds to take care of some of these issues. And that's more reason why we can decide that we are going for an element of excessive purpose, taxation or a special dedication based on law, so that appropriation bill, whenever it's passed, would designate that an amount of 0.01 of the consolidated fund should be designated for child victims, so that there's a victim support fund in which there is money put in the fund. But we know how funds have been treated in this country, the disability fund, among other funds. Unless we have a designation by law, which will mandate some of us who are into civil society as well as private legal practice to be able to demand those monies being put in the fund. Otherwise, if we put them in the general category of consolidated fund, every year the government will say there is no money. But if there's a special law which mandates that about 2% of amount that is realized from, let's say, GET fund, should be further be put into this fund, then if the GET fund is not doing it, some of us can compel them to do it because we are backed by law. But for now, there is no fund set up for victims, and so you cannot do it unless the state provides the resources. It will be private, out of private benevolence. And I don't think that for some of us who are into this field, this is just less than 1%. There are a lot of people who have to settle these matters in their house. And if you realize, they mentioned the issue that it was raised that they wanted a settlement, because if you look at the stress involved, the cost involved, even the environment of the court is not child-friendly. When the child decides to go to school, go to the court, I think the child is going to miss school. Courts are held over weekdays or not over weekends. But it means that the father and the grandparents who are taking the child to the court cannot go to work. The state does not pay for that. And these are the real issues on the ground.
Looking at the measures that government has to put in place to ensure that these things do not happen and do not happen that frequently, I want to refer you to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, Articles 34 and 35 of which require countries to protect children from all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. Now, when I see all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse here, does that mean that we have not properly looked at this to want to implement it well so that our laws can cover any sexual activity, any sexual abuse, not just penetration?
Daniel, you have even gone too far, the UN Convention. Just pick the Children's Act. All these principles that have been stated in the UN Convention is captured in the Constitution, is captured under our Children's Act and various facets of the law. The bare truth of the matter is that we have not, as a country, shown commitment towards this area of our law. We have done lip service in terms of that. Go and look, if you like, send your reporters to go to social welfare. The conditions that the social workers are living in there, the institutions that have been mandated to do this, so that by the time that you're coming, this is a matter that social welfare should be involved in. But have you seen a social welfare report on it? What is happening to the child? The child psychology. Have you given the child clinical psychologist? These are matters that you require funding, but the institutions are not funded. So as a state, we have not fulfilled our mandate under the UN Convention. And UN Convention is even for, as a state, the obligation of the state under our Constitution has not even been fulfilled. And it all calls upon all of us for us to talk to power and let power reveal to us how much money has he designated for this kind of activities. And you'll be surprised to know, but it will be interesting to state that it will be very, very zilch.
So where do we begin from if we want to begin implementing the solution so that people don't end up like this 9-year-old girl now?
I think where we begin is, first of all, we need to talk to parliamentarians so that there will be a special dispensation when the victim involved is a child. We should not put children in the same category as that of adults. And for now, that's how the law has structured it. And so it makes the judges restricted. And I think that the focus has been too much on judges. The focus is not on judges. The judge has a very simple mandate. If, for instance, the judge feels so much bitter about the case and the state, i.e. the executive arm of government, issues a knowledge, the judge cannot do anything about it. So we need to, first of all, see how we pass special laws for children. And one of the first things that we can do, for starters, is to pass a child victim support fund in which, within the laws, we give a certain percentage of an amount that will be done through levies or taxes to go into that fund. That's the first. Then the second one is that how best we can build our social welfare system in this country, so that social workers can do it, and also clinical psychologists for these children. Because believe you me, this child can no longer go to school. We need to change the schools of the child. There's economic hardship on them. What is the DES doing about it? What is going to happen to this teacher when he comes back from jail? These are the things that people have put down policies to do. Oftentimes, these people, you hear the sanctions, and you have done so many stories about what happened to teachers. Some teachers are transferred, some of them are sacked. But even when the child, legal aid, go and look at legal aid. So for the solutions, let's start, for one, let's look at our criminal laws, which judges have advocated over the years since 1971 that we need to change our laws, okay, to make special designation for children. Two, let's give them support, financial support. And three, let's build the institutions so that by this time we are having this discussion, the social welfare officer in that district should be telling us what special thing they have done for the child. And it should not be the grandfather chasing these things.
Right. Okay, lawyer, thank you very much for joining us. Dennis J. Jumo is a director for Center for Juvenile Delinquency, and he is also a private legal practitioner. Telling us first of all, we are not applying the laws as we should be. And very important points that he raised there. We are not applying the laws as we should be. The number of international conventions, like I just read from the UNCRC, which we are supposed to put in place to better protect children. And most importantly, the Victim Support Fund. This is part of the main child protection policy, which we should have. You know what? Discussion around the child protection policy, it started around the time we aired a story of a 4-year-old who was abused in Adadiente, in the central region. It was the same Maxwell Agbagba who went out to do the story, sparked this whole Justice for Her campaign, Justice for Kids campaign. And we remember that discussion began. As part of it, a Victim Support Fund was supposed to be set up. We are here again, and we've had to literally raise funds to support the grandfather to take care of the child in the hospital. So it's like we are back to square one in this thing, which is what Dennis A.J. Jumo is advocating, that we take proactive steps to implement. I don't know where your mind is on this.
I mean, I'm at the legal side, because if you can't treat, like he said, a child and an adult the same way. And I mean, we're happy about the fact that the process has gone on quickly, and there seems to be an element of justice. And he also, said that the judge has imposed the highest punishment that she can within the parameters of this case, which is 3 years, because it's indecent assault. And the difference between indecent assault and defilement, for which the maximum sentence is 7 years, is the fact that there was no penetration, or it wasn't sexual penetration, But for me, I mean, from a layman's point of view, the damage is the same, regardless of what penetrated her, regardless of whatever that is, the damage is still the same. And 3 years is not enough. And so I may not have the power to move this forward in terms of the law, but I appeal to those who can, that if there must be a caveat for children, if there must be something so that people who attack children are punished to the highest possible level, then that is done as a deterrent. And I mean, one of our listeners has texted in and is saying that it's appalling. I mean, 3 years for destroying the little girl's life forever is not a deterrent. In that moment, if you think, okay, the maximum sentence I can get is 3 years, is not enough. If you're thinking life, if you're thinking, I mean, even things like chemical castration, which may be a bit extreme, but the thing is, it's such, I don't want to get worked up about it, but it's such a defilement, and
especially considering the damage that has been done. I think, anyway, we could also think of it as assault. I mean, because the girl was damaged as a result.
But that's physical. The fact that she fell and all of that. But the actual charge is indecent assault.
That is separate. Yes, but I mean, if I was thinking through this, maybe I could also add an assault charge, because I mean, she has been assaulted physically.
She has been assaulted physically, and then maybe a mental assault as well. I mean, it's
I don't know if
I'm just saying, I know,
assault.
But you see how we feel, because generally we're feeling like it's not enough, and I think if the sentence was enough or was a little bit more, then we would, have maybe a sense of justice being done. And I don't think that we get that, even though it's not the judge's fault, because she did do the best that she could do. And for that, we're grateful. We are grateful.
Yeah, we are grateful. Well, it's 24 minutes past 8 here on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. We've just been joined in the studio by the Deputy Minister for Education, Dr. Yao Educhum. And good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
I am blessed. How are you?
Good.
Yes, and a very good friend of the Super Morning Show has also joined us as well. Okay, so what we will do, of course, Emmanuel Afo he's a teacher, and he's also going to join us on the conversation we are about to have. Good morning, Ima.
Good morning, Daniel.
Yes. So what we'll do is that since this involves sexual abuse in a school setting, would like to pick thoughts of my guests on it before we go on a break and come and deal with the Launchpad, our Enroll Me Now campaign. So let me start with you, Dr. Educhum. This story of a 9-year-old girl who went for vacation classes was asked to stay behind by her teacher, and the teacher inserted his fingers where the sun doesn't shine. She fell as a result. She was partially paralyzed. We were even wondering ourselves how she was able to run home. But of course, we know our minds and adrenaline can do various things. The doctors will have to establish that. But we have seen this girl finding it difficult to walk as a result of what she went through. Terrible, terrible, terrible story, isn't it? Doctor, I just want to pick your general thoughts.
I don't think I can say anything more than what you've said. Terrible, terrible, terrible. It's unfortunate that this should take place anywhere. Not even in school, anywhere, at home, wherever it is. But when it takes place at school, then it's even more terrible.
For teachers to be able to do this,
is where children should feel safe. Children should feel safe in schools because you have people who have been trained to take care of them. So when you breach that trust, it hurts more than any place else. So yes, I'm glad that at least justice has been served, even if we don't agree with whatever sentence was meted out. And probably most of us thought he should get more than what he has gotten. But at least it will send a message that you cannot abuse children and get away with it. And as we talk about this, we also have to begin to look at, I believe it's a private school.
Yes, it's a private school. Yeah, it's a private school.
This is where sometimes we have this argument about licensing and all those kind of issues. If somebody gets a degree from a university, you cannot go and take it away from them when they do something this terrible. But if you give them a license, you can take it away from them so that they will never step into any classroom anywhere in the country. As it is now, after the sentence, if we are not careful, this guy can go into other school and teach. So this is why sometimes when this argument about licensing comes up and become a big issue as to why I should be licensed or not licensed, these are clear examples of where license opportunities, because when as part of the process when you're doing the fingerprints, something like this will come up if you attempt to go and get a license and you'll be caught and you'll never be able to step in. So I'm hoping that it's a wake-up call for all of us to begin to look at things that we need to do to protect children, so that places where they are supposed to be protected shouldn't be places where they get harmed.
Yes, speaking of things we need to do to protect children, let's go to the school setting in the general education sector. We see that things like this happen, and we have research that suggests that 58% of all gender-based violence really happens in a school setting. Hearing numbers like that, how do we deal with this to bring the numbers down?
I mean, for a start, issues about license, as I've told you, it's a very good start, because when you're going to get your license and you do your fingerprints, if an allegation like this has been leveled against you participated in this, you cannot be in the classroom. So that's your first step. And then begin to look at those who get into the classroom and they may not have any record and do something terrible, should immediately be taken out of the classroom so that they don't get to go back and do something terrible against children. And then the next thing that you need to do is training. You cannot take it for granted that people are adults and therefore they should know better. As part of our teacher training programs and as part of our ongoing professional development, our teachers should be trained about sexual harassment and child abuse so that they are keenly aware. Just like some people will say that, but he's an adult. We go to church and we are preached to every day. Why don't we say that, we are or we go to the mosque and we still get messages. So it's important that we do ongoing professional development and training and reminders for people to know that this is not something you do to anybody, and you dare not get close to doing something like that. So I believe that you have to look at the various facets, and also getting the law enforcement to be swift. As I said earlier, at some places that when issues like this occur, wherever it occurs, whether it's senior high school, junior high school, or primary, I don't think it should be the prerogative of the school administrators to do investigation. Law enforcement should be at the front end. School can take administrative measures to remove the person, but law enforcement should take the frontline role. And after that, we can circle back and say, you've been freed. Law enforcement say you are not guilty. You were not prosecuted. Nothing untoward happened. Maybe it was a lie against you, and therefore come and do your job again. But I think there has to be a whole
another look at
all those. So that,
but as a minister, you've had an opportunity to look at some of these issues and implement some measures. What has been done so far?
I mean, Ghana education hasn't been very swift, and I want to commend Prof. Opoku Amankwa. There has never been a time when allegation has been made and he is not moving swiftly to the scene to bring the report and to take actions. We all know what took place in Ejusuman, and he took action. So Ghana Education Service is on their very high on their radar screen.
The complaints were raised that some of the actions taken were too lenient. Some of the teachers were just transferred.
No, the point of the matter is this, and that is why, to me, law enforcement taking the front row will avoid all these kind of accusations. You see, if it's crime, wherever it occurs, within the authority of law enforcement. So we shouldn't be dictating to law enforcement. So I'm sure they were involved as part of it. If they saw anything criminal, it doesn't matter whether you were transferred or not transferred. If they saw something that they think borders on criminality, even if you're transferred, you can be arrested for prosecution. So I don't think when we say that some of these things were lenient, we are probably not being fair to Ghana Education Service. I was not personally there as part of the investigation. What we do is report. But I think if there's something there and somebody did something terrible, Ghana Education Service cannot give you immunity. They can't tell law enforcement
not to crack the whip. But the concern there, like you said, is these persons may be transferred. They will go to another school where this can
that's why I'm saying that GES should not even have the prerogative to determine the kind of sanctions that comes to anybody when these allegations are made against them. In other jurisdictions, it's not the school authorities who determine it. If they did something untoward and they are guilty of something, if they did something wrong, the law can take its own course, whatever we say, even at the Ministry of Education. If the Ministry of Education says this is the sanction and law enforcement say no, we can't tell them what to do. But I think Ghana Education Service had a long period of time. They did a thorough investigation. Some people were given stiff sanctions. So if they are transferring, there must be a rationale as to why they thought transfer was appropriate. For example, if allegations had been leveled against someone, teacher A, after the whole thing was done, teacher A did not do it. Let's say he didn't do it. But staying at that school, there's going to be a stigma. So Ghana Education Service can decide that even though the allegations, in our opinion, was not proven true, it will be in your interest and it will be good for the children and for the service for you to be transferred out of here. And I can see why that decision will be made under those circumstances, because it doesn't matter what you say. If those allegations are leveled against you, you have a problem in terms of your legitimacy to teach. And so under those circumstances, I think they will be right to say that you didn't do it, your image is tainted. This is the decision that we are making. And under those circumstances, I'll respect their decision. But I'm just saying that...
you were talking about the GES and the work that they have done in preventing things like this from happening generally in schools. That was the thought you were on.
Yeah, of course. I'm just saying that in the recent incidences, I think they've done well in being swift. But it should be more than that. In my opinion, as a society, law enforcement should take the front row in a number of distance, while the organization can do their own administrative issues and decision making.
Right. And that was Dr. Yaw Adutwum. Well, that is Dr. Yaw Adutwum. He's the Deputy Minister for Education. We also have with us Emmanuel Afful. He's a certified Cambridge IGCSE and A-level English language tutor. We've also been joined by Madiz Adamu Issa. He is an education specialist with UNICEF. Good morning, Mr. Issa.
Good morning.
Hope all is well.
Good.
Great. So this morning we are here to talk about why you should send your children to school at the right age. I was telling you earlier how sending a child to school is a very important thing, but sending a child to school at the right age is just as important. That's an opportunity that 723,000 children did not have. When we come back from these messages, we'll be hearing The Launchpad. It's a documentary put together by a very good friend of mine, MFA, Etiamwa Elliott. It's part of our project Enroll Me Now that we are taking part of with good help from our friends at UNICEF. We'll hear that when we come back. Stay with us.
I want you to first